Yeah, we're live. I have a chair just in case. We might have a special guest. We've got a Ford here. It is a small block Ford 302. I'm going to move this back just a skosh. Just a skosh. Yeah, it'll work out good. So tonight we're going to talk about the Ford 302. That's the next motor that I have going on the dyno, so we can do some testing with. I'm already pulling off, for those guys that were here last night, I'm already pulling off the 400 Pontiac. It worked out great. I got lots of testing done. I was able to compare the stock factory 4-barrel intake manifold with a factory 2-barrel intake manifold and the Holley or the Edelbrock Performer intake manifold. I was able to compare the Quadrajet versus the Quick Fuel 750 with using an adapter to adapt it to, obviously we had a 4-barrel factory 4-barrel for the Pontiac that was designed to accept the Quadrajet. So I had an adapter to go from Quadrajet to 4150 so I could run that Quick Fuel carburetor. I also, on that Quick Fuel carburetor, when I had it on there, because it was a vacuum secondary, a lot of times on the dyno, what we do is we'll just tie the secondaries so that it becomes a mechanical linkage basically, and that way we ensure that we get wide open throttle. But I did a cool test. I did a comparison between doing it that way and then just the vacuum secondaries operating the way that they would normally out on the street. So that's a good comparison. I also did some tuning on the Quadrajet. It's not magic. What happened, and I did this out of necessity on the 400 because we had the Quadrajet on there. We ran it and it was basically lean, so it needed more fuel. So what I did was just took a swing at changing the metering rods and took a pretty good swing at it. But and I'll show you, not only in a video coming up, I'll show you the change in air fuel and then also the associated change in power, because this was an instance where a lot of times when we do these and we change jetting, let's say, we don't get a big change in power from going from 11.5 to 1 to 12 to 1. But in this instance, changing the metering rods in the Q-Jet resulted in a pretty significant change in power. It wanted to be richer than it was, and we were able to do that with the metering rod change, and we were also able to pick up power. So, win-win. I tried different timing sweeps on the 400. We did that stuff. The 2-barrel is really going to be surprising for people. It knocked out a ton of power with that 2-barrel. Now, I don't know what size that thing is, and I don't know what they flow, but it can't be very much. To give you an idea, we were showing 10 inches of vacuum in that manifold when we ran the 2-barrel on this 400. So it was a lot. And thinking back, when I did my comparison, and this video is up, because I did my comparison on a small block Chevy, and we ran the 2-barrel and the 2-barrel intake manifold, the cast iron factory small block Chevy 2-barrel intake manifold, and the 2G, the one that would have come factory on a motor back in the day. And then we put a cast iron 4-barrel Quadrajet manifold, again, another factory piece, with a Quadrajet, this one from Sean Murphy. And I think we picked up somewhere in the 30 to 35 horsepower range, something like that. And thinking back, but that was at like the 250 horsepower level. So we went from 240 to 270 or something like that. And I thought, okay, well, then that's how much more power a Quadrajet is worth, or a 4-barrel is worth, or a 2-barrel. Thinking in universal terms, like I shouldn't, like I tell people not to all the time, because we're looking at a motor here on the 400 that made quite a bit more power than that starting off. So it was a lot. I mean, we're talking about 85 or 90 horsepower going from the 2-barrel to the 4-barrel. It was dramatic. It was so dramatic that I thought something was wrong with the motor, and I put the 4-barrel back on, and lo and behold, it came right back up. So we did everything. I checked. We verified timing. We verified wide open throttle. The air fuel was nice. The telling thing is that we know that we had wide open throttle, and the telling thing was the fact that we had so much vacuum in the intake manifold that, and when I took the intake manifold back off to do more intake testing, I looked all in there to make sure that there wasn't a rag in there, something weird going on. But that's what happened. So that video will also be coming out, so that'll be interesting. One, I also ran the Edelbrock Performer, not an RPM, and these are all air gaps kind of because that's the way Pontiac does it. but not the RPM. And I'm hoping, based on these results, that the Performer RPM offers a lot more power than the Performer did, because the Performer did not do well relative to the factory cast iron intake manifold. The cast iron intake manifold did very well, as did the Quadrajet. So lots of cool testing. Like I said, we did timing, we did air fuel. The interesting thing is, despite the fact that we had a Quadrajet manifold, and then we ran an adapter. Normally, you go from the you put a Quadrajet on a 4150 is the way that the thing is set up. But if you flip it over, we can go the other way. We can put a 4150 and have it go to a Quadrajet. But we ran the quick fuel carburetor just out of the box. I mean, when I say out of the box, we did nothing. I didn't adjust anything. I didn't adjust the jets. I didn't so much as adjust the idle screw, the idle mixture, the throttle adjustment set, like the idle speed, nothing. I just took it and put it on, and it worked flawlessly. So it just goes to show you that a lot of people will tell you, especially old timers, I think, and maybe this was the way it was back then. Maybe we just got lucky, but the air fuel at wide open throttle was nice. The starting, the tip in, all that stuff, it worked out really good. And as I said, the vacuum secondary operation also worked out very well. So that's kind of what we see more often than not, is if we take a carburetor and take it out of the box and put it on, it works. I mean, it might not be ideal. Maybe it's 11 to 1, or maybe it's 11.8, or maybe it's 13 to 1, and maybe it does need some adjustment like that. But it will go on, and it will go on and run. And not only will it go on and run on that 400, if I put it on this 302, not with this manifold, it would also work. It works on a lot of different things, because the amount of fuel that's drawn in is a function of what the engine is asking it to do, is the amount of airflow. So these things work a lot of the time. And as we showed in the test that I did with the guys from Engine Masters on the tuning thing, where we went from 13 to 1 to 9 to 1, you have to be way off for it to be that bad. And even when we were that rich, it just made a little less power. It didn't stop working. It didn't misfire. It didn't do weird things. So you have to be really far off. And I guess my point is that these carburetors tend to work pretty well. So lots of Pontiac testing. I'm trying to think of what else we did. We did rich lean, we did timing, we did 2-barrel, did 4-barrel, did the 2 different kinds of 4-barrel, did vacuum secondary, did the aluminum intake, and I think that was it. I think that's all that we tested. I did not do a camshaft, because my suggestion for the owner of this motor is going to be to put the motor in the way that it is right now, with the cast iron Quadrajet manifold, with the Quadrajet. It's all tuned, and we tuned the transition, the drivability, the actuation of we adjusted the secondary air door, and so it's all like the way that you would want it running in a car. So it's going to go in a car, and it will drive around, and it idles nice, it transition, it does all that stuff. So it should work very well the way that it is, and it will have more than enough power to do what they're going to do. And then later on, if they do need more power and want to step the thing up, and it should work good. But I think it's going to have a turbo 400 probably, with not a big stall converter. So I think this is a really good combination. Rather than stick a cam in it and maybe make it a little bit more problematic, they're not going to be looking to make 400 horsepower. The 400 foot-pounds is going to be a lot more important for what they're doing. So all of that testing went well. So what's up next is 5-liter testing. And actually, I had forgotten that I had already put fuel injection on here. I actually wanted to do more testing with carburation and try to get a couple more cams tested on this, the Summit Alphabet cams, their versions of the legendary Ford racing stuff. Theirs are dual pattern with a pretty good size split, obviously different valve events and stuff, similar but more modern. A lot of the Ford stuff are single patterns and not really, by any means ideal. Although it would be interesting to know how many of those Ford racing cams they sold, how many B cams they sold. I'll bet during its heyday, they had to be selling 10,000 of those a month or more. I mean, those things were everywhere. And then they once they, you know, flooded the market with B303 cams, and they go, oh, well, we also have these other ones. We have an E and an X and an F and all these other ones, you know, because then you got to have a blower cam and a turbo cam and a nitrous cam and an NA cam, and guys were now making more power, so you got to have a bigger version of the cam and all that stuff, and they did a good job and sold a bunch of those. You know, more modern stuff that like Summit has, I'm sure is going to make more power than the single pattern cams that they had. But the thing is much more like my question, and I get this from the previous test that I did where we did a video on this already, running the version of the E-cam. I think the question is, yeah, it makes more power, and it makes more power enough that if a guy is going to get a new E-cam, he might be a buyer for this new Summit E-cam. The question is whatever added power there is that enough to justify a guy getting rid of his E-cam and stepping up to this other E-cam, or would he be better off getting something else? So that's a you know, that's really a question that only the guys that are thinking about doing that are going to answer. You know, it's all going to be cost versus return. It's return on investment. Is the power enough to justify whatever that new cam costs? Because, you know, stuff is not cheap anymore. And if you already have one and it works, and a new one is 10, 20, 30 horsepower better, whatever the number is that's going to push you over the edge, that now you know you have to get it. And then my question is, and as is always for the choosing some individual component that you'd want to get, are they going to want to choose that, or are they going to want to choose some other kind of modern cam, the Extreme Energy, which now is not modern anymore. It's been around forever. That Extreme Energy 274, you know, an Anderson, or lots of other people have other kinds of cams for these things. And so I wonder how the Summit stuff, whether they're going to be a player in that market, and that's the thing. So we need to get a poll up here. Let's see here. Is the 5-liter Mustang still a performance player today? Is the 5-liter Mustang still a performance player today? You know, back in the 80s and 90s, it was like the darling of the industry. Now, obviously, LS stuff. But so is a 5-liter Mustang still a performance player in today's world? We'll see what people think about that. We can walk in. We can take a look at the take a quick look at the 400. That's still sitting on the dyno, basically ready for me to pull it off. It's all disconnected and stuff. But now. So here's some of the stuff over here. That's the quickie fuel. So here it is in all its glory, ready to come off. I'll Q jet up. Womp. And, or if you like, 2-barrel. All 2-barreled up. This is interesting over here on this side with the header. There's no way that they'll be able to run this sensor with the header the way that it is in the car. That's just not going to happen. So I don't know if they make one of these with a different angle where it puts the filter somewhere, or if they did a remote filter or something, because it's not going to work the way that it is. What I had to do was on the header, first of all, I had to take the hammer to it a little bit. It was hammer time. And then also I wrapped it with some header wrap to make sure that it wasn't, because before it was touching the oil filter, which is not good. Instead of oil cooling, it had oil heating, which obviously is not good. But you know, I don't think, and that was just with our fitting that we run up to the, you know, oil pressure gauge on the dyno, and that's a lot smaller than that sending unit is. So there, something is going to have to be done there. Something must be done. Yes, it must. Okay, let's see what you guys got going on. I might have a special guest. I'm going to check. I'll be right back. Wall, wall. Whoa. And I'm back. Ta-da! So let's see what kind of questions you guys got going on. Hopefully our guests will arrive, but until then I can answer some questions. GT40 intake, twisted weight heads, and E303. That's like the 5-liter life. Flow masters, that's right. You got to have flow masters. 2-chamber, and then the argument is 2-chamber or 3-chamber. Which one of those is the best? The picture is right tonight. Yeah, and I haven't changed the other one. I forgot about. I changed one of them, and it's right. And I forgot about the previous one. In fact, I put up one already tonight for this that was wrong. I just didn't post it. And then right at the last second, I went back and did my flipping process and went back up there. I don't know why. I don't know why it's doing that on YouTube, but you know, that's all part of it. Shirley, you can't be serious. Yes, you don't call me Shirley. For sure, yes, it'll always be strong aftermarket support. It still does have a lot, and I'm sure that they still sell a ton of 5-liter stuff. I know that the LS is selling a ton. It's kind of the new darling, but you know, these things still make power. And if nothing else, the Mustang is a good place to put LS motors into. I have a 302 with AFR and comp cam, air gap. That's a really solid combination. Too bad you didn't have a tri-power test. Yeah, I would have, and we were talking about that. We talked about the tri-power. If one 2-barrel is good for like 250, then 2 is good for 500, then the third one is good for 750, right? We were doing our Pontiac math. The pizza guy totally qualifies as a special guest, especially if he brings wings or something else, and maybe dessert. I love my 86 Fox when I had it. GT40 heads and intake, E303, 24-pound injectors. Ooh, 373 gears and a T5. What's up? Did you figure out where it was?
Yeah, I didn't mention the cover.
Okay. Issues over there fixing this little turbo Honda. I say little, it's not little anymore. It's a built motor now with a cool fuel system and all kinds of stuff. Oil return modifications on a 351 Windsor for high RPM power. Love the information. I don't oil return. I don't. You just gonna have to modify the hole size as best you can. Some guys do the Gliptol stuff and get it flowing. I honestly think that that's one of the problems that we had with this Pontiac. Is it had some weird. That's the other testing that I was trying to think of. Is I ran. I'll show you what happened with the oil pressure curves, because basically this thing is over full on oil. It has more, it's got like 7 quarts in it, which is more than it should have. And I did a test by, you know, because if we see fluctuations in the oil pressure curve, like dramatic ones, not that it goes up and comes down. It's not going to have a strictly rising curve like a gerotor pump does, like on an LS. So normally what these do is like on a small block Ford or Chevy or whatever of this, they'll go up and they'll just arc over. But if we see something where it like takes a big drop and keeps going, or takes a big drop, the first thing we look for is the same thing we look for on big block Chevys. We look for like windage issues or oil level issues. And so that's the test I did on that one too. I thought, well, I wonder what's going on. And as always, because of safety first, I add oil first and say, well, okay, well, let's start with the fact that it might not have enough. So let's put a half quart in, then let's put a quart in. And we're really just looking for trends. I don't care about the amount or what the stick says or what it should be or anything. We're just looking for the engine and the dyno to tell us, yes, I like that, or no, I don't like that. So we're looking for trends as we add oil. So just like with timing, we go the opposite direction. We take away timing first to see what's going on, and then we would add it. So I tried adding oil, and then I tried taking oil away. And then when I took oil away, we had a dramatic change in the shape of the curve. So as best I can figure without taking the pan off, what I kind of think is happening is this thing might have a high volume oil pump because it has fairly high pressure as long as you can get the curve to stay consistent. The pressure is pretty high, you know, in the 80+ pound range. And we're only running this thing to like 5,500. So that's fairly high. So it tells me that it's got a high volume or high pressure pump probably. And that what I was thinking is happening is possibly, and we see this on 351 sometimes 302s, where you're basically draining the pan and it's not draining back fast enough. It's not refilling the pan and you get some oil starvation. The other thing that's a possibility is the pickup is too far off of the pan surface. So instead of being 3/8 of an inch, it's a half or 3/4 of an inch. And so it needs extra oil. And because of, you know, how big the pan is and having that off that far, that can be a fairly big amount. Like it takes a big amount to fix that situation. So something's going on there, and I didn't solve that. We just added more oil to it, and it would work. So what I've done is added oil, remarked the stick, and I'm telling them, look, you need to have more oil than you would normally have, or you need to be at this part on the stick, and everything seems to work out fine. They're not going to be doing any endurance racing or anything in it, and it works fine the way that it is. I'm kind of curious to see what the situation is. If it's this motor for 5,500 RPM doesn't need a high volume oil pump. And I'd like to see, I don't know what the inside of that Pontiac pan looks like. I'm assuming like most of these pans that it's just open, but it would be good if it had a windage tray or at least a dedicated sump or something so that, you know, it wouldn't ever run into starvation. Pickup is clear and strong or sucking air. It could be sucking air, and that's what I mean. If it's uncovering the pickup, I don't know what the pickup looks like on a Pontiac. If there's another area for it to be loose and occasionally sucking air, that's another possibility. Back in the day, Pontiac had a different oil filter mount that angled back. I think I've seen one of those before. Troy was telling me about one that he thought that the guys had run here before. Just got my AFR 165 Renegades for my 5-liter. Nice. Those will work good. I have seen the lawnmower carb. Picked up a running 5-liter from a 91 town car, $150. Nice. Need a super trick modified oil pan that holds 2.5 extra quarts. Well, this one will. You just fill it up to valve cover level. Please do a 3.7 V6 test. Which 3.7 is that? Is it a Dodge or what is it? Best head for a 5-liter. I don't know what you mean about best. By best, Aaron? If one of those makes 3 more horsepower than the other one, if I tested, is which one of those is better? Can you do a big bang on a 460, 351, and 302, please? The 302 will not work out very well. The 351 we did. 460 would be interesting. I have a 91 Ford 300. Any way to tune it without switching back to a carb? Yeah, they should be able to. A 91 ECU, they should be able to. They should have access to. Crack the block of my turbo 5-liter. Assembling another short block. The nice thing is you go get, you know, it's like LS's. You go get Explorer short blocked all day long. I still have a GT40 intake in the box. I got it when I was working for Celine in '89. Wow, back in the day. They were talking $50 a week, or they're taking $50 a week out of my check to pay for it. But 2 weeks later, we had it all paid off. Nice. The Trick Flow 11R heads are really good. So are the Airflow 165s. I would say probably 95% of the 302s that are out there are not taking advantage of what either one of those heads have to offer. They sold kits to put 385 engines in Fox Mustangs back in the day. Yeah, they did. As a matter of fact, one of the guys that's coming here is the guy that designed those. The AFR 220s on a 5-liter, that's a lot of cylinder head. Kurt, I've heard that if you use a very light flywheel with a T5 and a 5-liter, your trans will live a lot more horsepower. What's the max power potential of the GT40 intake? There is no maximum, because if you keep adding boost to it, it will keep making power. I guess at some point there would be a limitation to how much flow you could get through there, but I don't know what that is. About to do intake gaskets on my 94 C1500. Check and make sure what year was that? 94? I don't even know what motor that is. What is that? Is that an L31? What's needed to take advantage of what those heads offer? So let's say that those heads will support more than 500 NA horsepower. So do you have a 302 that makes more than 500 NA horsepower? Most people don't. Boosted ones do that. But to get a 302 to make 100 horsepower per liter, and to get it to do it with that head as opposed to an even bigger head, where you're making less horsepower per CFM, because it's easier to do that. What we want is a head that has lots and lots of airflow. So then we can pick and choose, and we can make lots of power. But if you have a 5-liter and you're trying to make 100 horsepower per liter out of a set of cylinder heads that will support right around there, all the other things have to be really, really good. You have to have enough compression. The cam timing has to be spot on. You have to have the right intake manifold, carburetor or fuel injection, whatever thing you're running. All of that stuff has to be, spot on. And the average guy puts together something more like this. Not particularly or specifically a GT40, but a 302, stock bottom end, Explorer kind of thing, some kind of head, some GT40 Explorer stuff, some kind of intake, if it's an EFI intake manifold. Most 302 builds like that are going to be more to the 400 side of power than they will be to the 500 side of power. And again, either one of those heads will take you to 500 if the motor's right. David Vizard says the roller small block Ford and ABC blocks are weaker. Don't use them, and I agree. The thin wall casting, these late model 5-liter deals are not as strong as the earlier 302 block. I've heard that Edelbrock Victor Jr. heads on an R302 block have head gasket sealing issues. I've never heard that. I don't know what that is. I think I'm plugged in there, right? There we go. Now we're plugged in. Sign. Warning, danger, Will Robinson. You'll split your block at 500. Oh, the 3.7 is a Cyclone Ford, 60-degree, put in the later Mustangs. Okay. Admiral, I don't have a favorite piston brand. Lots of good pistons out there that work. Scott, the 393 was not a 4125 bore. In Corky Bell's book, Maximum Boost, he states that a stock cam is hard to beat for a turbo application. That's not anywhere near accurate. If you can put a camshaft in a 302 that would not be uncommon for, if you had a 302 that had decent heads on it, for you to put a camshaft in that made 50 horsepower. That means if you run it under boost, at the same boost level, you could pick up 100 horsepower. So the stock cam that's not accurate. It will work, and you can drive around with it, and it'll make boost, and it'll do all that. It'll just make less power at any given boost level than a more powerful naturally aspirated motor that has a good cam in it. I'm gonna go to PAW. Somebody who I was just talking to somebody today about Speedomotive. I think maybe it was Eric. So instead of spending more money upgrading my ported Trickflow 170s for my 351 roller, I should consider another higher waist cage spring. Worried 550 at the wheels on 12 pounds on pump gas. You shouldn't be worried about the strength of the motor. The motor will take twice that, so it will take a lot more power. Your concern should just be the tune that you have for pump gas. Yeah, Super Shops goes back even further, I think. Molly makes good stuff. CP, I've had good luck with CP. I've done JE, Wiseco. We've done almost all of them. Bought a lot of stuff from PAW. My favorite thing about the PAW and Speedomotive catalogs was to go through them and try to figure out a way that I could get past their combos, that I could put together my own combo through just piecemealing the other stuff together to make a better deal than the super combos that they were offering. And so we spent hours trying to do that, but they were actually pretty good at their job. Loper's performance back in the day. Yep. Can you recommend any headers that would fit a 4.63 valve and a 2000 Explorer? The room is tight. I don't know specific applications like that, specific chassis. What's the max duration at 50 you can run and still make enough vacuum for power brakes? I don't know what size motor you have. I don't know what the rest of the combination is. There's a lot of stuff going on there. It's not just the duration. It's the valve events. Robert, you want to know why your friend doesn't sell his Focus? It's been in the garage for 3 years. Because it's a project car. He's right in the middle of it. The first generation Lightning was a 351 with this style intake manifold on it. Super Shops had all the Urson stuff. Yeah, that's right. Complete with the nuts, bolts, and gaskets. Matt, if a remanufactured ECU has programming problems, that's certainly possible. It's possible for a factory one to have that too, if it's been dropped or damaged or the board was not soldered correctly. I don't have experience with dry sump stuff. I bought a Ford racing intake just like the one behind you for my 351 about 12 years ago. So do you have the 351 lower too? That's kind of cool. Are there any issues using painless wiring systems? I've only run 2 of their systems. One was in our World Challenge car, and the other was in some kind of street car that I helped somebody put one in. And both of them worked fine. That's all the experience I have with those. Charles, have you ever had 2 different size cylinder heads that make similar NA power, but with boost, the larger head makes significantly more? No, I've never had that happen. Would you happen to know what kind of bolt-ons would go good 95 Lightning? Your 95 is an NA 351, right? If it is, then the same thing that works on a 5-liter, ported heads, cam. The intake manifold's not bad, but there are better ones. Headers. Chester, I've actually walked into a super shop. I've been into a couple of them. They had a big one on Harbor Boulevard way back in the day. So you got the lower for the GT40. That's good. What would you recommend for a head and cam for a turbo 5.0 around 450 horsepower? You could do with the stock stuff. Almost any kind of cam, any of the Alphabet cams, the 274 cam, a 266 cam. I would, if I was doing it with my budget, I would go get GT40 heads, because that with those heads and a cam, you're just boost away from making that kind of power. Eric, I have a 95 5-liter Mustang with a cold air intake and a catback system. I ordered shorty headers, X-pipe, 70mm throttle body, 76mm mass air, and new 19-pound injectors. It's a good way to start for street driving. Yeah, but why would you get, if you ordered a mass air, you should get one with 24-pound injectors. You should get one calibrated for 24s. That way you have enough fuel to go up in power, because I'm assuming that you're going to do more mods later on. What mods can I do under $500 for my Regal? Oh, it's an NA one? I don't think you have too much to choose from. A cam is really the only thing that's going to wake that up. Yeah, super shops did go bankrupt. Watching on 2X, I don't miss the Pontiac Dyno results. Exhaust ports with fewest sections are always bad on Fords. The intakes are no picnics either. So how is our poll doing? We got some 5-liter lovers here. Yeah, yes. Still a player, 83%. That's the new 100. So I'll give you guys, since you're here, I will give you some updates. Really, I'm going to answer some poll questions from previous live feeds since I've been down here at West Tech Performance. And one of them was, is the quick fuel carburetor going to make more power than the Quadrajet? And the answer to that poll question, as we found out on the dyno, is actually no. It didn't make any more power. They were basically just kind of overlays of each other. The other question is, one of the questions was, will the 400, will the Pontiac 400 make over 300 horsepower? And the answer to that question is yes, it did indeed make over 300 horsepower. In fact, it made 340 horsepower and 400 and, I don't know, 12 or 15 foot-pounds of torque. So it did very well. It made good power. It's doing kind of exactly what you would expect, I think. I don't know, looking at the idle, I don't know enough about Pontiac cams to know what the bigger stock cams will be like. But this thing makes peak power at like 5,300 or something. And peak torque is obviously quite a bit earlier than that. The thing idles nice at 700 or 750 or whatever. I think it's about 14 or 15 inches maybe. We're thinking it might have either some biggish stock cam or maybe a little RV cam or something. So, you know, but it's doing good. It made good power and it idles nice and drives well. Eric, 24-pound injectors won't be too much for anything as long as the meter, as long as the tuning knows it's a 24-pound injector. Then it will just supply the right amount of fuel. All you'll do is have more in reserve for when you do need to add, when you're adding airflow from heads or camshaft or that kind of thing. Hey, Richard, love the show. It's possible to make 500 horsepower with 302. Made it with a set of trick flow track heat heads and a 12.5 cam. I don't know what a 12.5 cam is. 600 lift, 106 center. Yeah, no, we know it's possible to make 500 horsepower. Tom, the guy that used to work here, did it, and it's not magic. I mean, but I'm just saying that if you're going to do that and take advantage of a 165 head or a trick flow 11R head like a 170 that might flow, you know, let's say 250 or 260 or something like that, then you know, that puts you at 520 or so at 2 horsepower per CFM. Lots of stuff has to be right, usually compression and cam timing and intake manifold. Are the Pontiac dyno results? Yeah, there'll be multiple Pontiac videos that I'm putting up. Have you done a cam test with a Comp XFI? Yes, I've run that XFI cam, the 248, the 236 248 cam many times, if that's the one you're talking about. Yeah, we run 5 liters with, I mean, this thing, the last time this ran, it had 80-pound injectors in it. And, you know, we've run 1500s on a 4.8. So, Saul, let's see. Thank you very much. How much power would you expect from a 306, 40 over, 11-to-1, F-cam, dual plane, ported, really well-ported sockets, upgraded valve train? I don't know. The thing that throws me off there is I have no idea what those heads flow, because I think that that's what's going to limit you. The F-cam's not very big. So I'm thinking it's going to be sub 400. Richard, I'm putting a Lightning 5.4 supercharger, a 5.4 supercharged engine in my Fox body. I think Evan did that. They did that on the refrigerator way back when for Muscle Mustangs and Fast Fords. Radial TAs, that's right. All the Ford 303 chems are not good, according to David. That's because they're single pattern and they don't have a 106-degree lobe separation angle. So not possible to make 600 horsepower from a GT40 head? Yes, it is possible. The easiest way to do it is with boost. Holley High Ram or Box R, an 11R 205, a 425 Windsor. I would like to try the High Ram on something like that. I've tried the box, and in my opinion of it is not as high as I think it's going to be for the Holley. So Robert, you're gonna do an asymmetrical turbo on your 3800. That'll be good. It's gonna have to be a pretty small turbo. 255 and 42-pound injectors, 500 wheel. That's 42s are going to be really close there, depending on how much fuel pressure you run, and certainly not on the 85. Celine, have you seen harmonic differences from different dampers? I don't know how we would measure that. You'd really need a damper dyno to do that. I don't know that that's going to show on power. Dan may have run some stuff on some of those high-end motors. I have had factory dampers come apart, which we don't like, and blew holes in the wall. Somebody was commenting on a 340 Dodge. You can't compare a 340 Dodge and this 400 because we don't know anything about this 400. It doesn't represent any sort of stock one and doesn't represent whatever the highest horsepower stock 400 was. A stock 340 represents the highest horsepower that a 340 made. So if you're going to do that, then you need to find out whatever year and application had the highest horsepower 400. And I guarantee you that a 400 will be up on the 340 by, I don't know, 60 foot-pounds of torque. Maybe more than that. Have you ever tried a 706 with a 202 valve? No, and you wouldn't put a 202, you'd put a 2-inch valve, and that's normally the go-to one for the LS stuff. I've run somebody was asking about a Parker funnel web. I've run Parker funnel webs a lot. It's been years since you did any Kennybell push rod stuff, but would you ever do a 363 Kennybell setup using an air-to-water intercooler? They don't have one for a 5-liter. They don't make a blower kit with an intercooler that incorporates an intercooler. You'd have to do a custom deal, and I wouldn't do a one-off custom thing for something like that. Kind of Ford related. It doesn't matter. It could be anything for tonight. Kind of Ford related, but planning on swapping a T5 trans into a 76 F100. How much power can I make before the trans becomes an issue? I ran a supercharged one of these for 85,000 miles. We ran Silver States, ran Foxtrots. I road raced it. We did all kinds of stuff. So whatever that is, it's I'm sure it was 450 at the tire or something. Just got an 07 GT500. Congrats. I got a tricky one for you. Could not having an adjustable panhard bar on a lower car cause diff noises because of the offset? Does that car from the factory have a panhard bar on it? Eric, what's going on? Will stock dish pistons and a Windsor clear 202 valve? That you don't know. You don't know which camshaft you're talking about. I would love to see you build a 408 small block out of a 350 block with a 4-inch stroke crank. It's hard to put that much stroke in a 350 block. We normally do 406s out of 400. No, what do we do? Yeah, the 400 blocks. What do we do the 406 out of? Maybe we did that, but it was a 3750 stroke, I think. Thank you for the information. I do plan on adding more mods. In your opinion, what's the best way to go about recalibrating the ECU? I've heard the handheld tuners aren't that great for the SN95. I don't know. I don't do a lot of factory stuff like that anymore, so I don't know what they're doing now. How do 5.432 valve engines handle hitting the limiter? Chains slap around. There is a lot of length there going on, but if you look at the Hovitz's, he has those chains on his, and he's limiting them at 9,500. So obviously it works. Are you gonna put a 5-liter in your Fox? I don't know yet. Any chance on some 392 Internationals? I don't think I've ever seen one of those. Will stock dish piston in a 351 Windsor clear with 202 valves with a stock cam? Yes. Why do you want 202 valves? There's so many good head choices out there that have lots of flow that you don't have to worry about that big a valve. A stock cam should have a mile of piston to valve clearance, and so going oversized in the valve shouldn't put you anywhere near that. When do you think we'll get a stroker crank for a 7.3 Godzilla? I don't know. I don't know what the architecture looks like inside. I'm sure people are looking at that though. I'm in Australia, down under. What's going on? Building an EFI 347 for a Falcon. I have an Edelbrock RPM, 75 millimeter throttle body, no MAF, automatic, 600 RPM ceiling. I don't think you need a 205 for that application if you're only going to 6,000 RPM. Somebody built a 408 out of a 350. I'll have to ask Brule about that. Would you recommend an F303 cam on a turbo 351? It will work and it will take boost. Whatever it does NA, it'll just get multiplied by boost. It's not a perfect turbo cam. Is a diesel engine more efficient than a petrol engine because of compression? It's because of a lot of reasons. Richard, why don't you build a bogus boss or cleavor? I have built cleavors. I have videos up on that already. So you can do with a 2-barrel Cleveland head. Carcraft built up a 500 horsepower on a 351 2-barrel head. With using 2-barrel heads, it must have been ported. Even an Australian 2B head is not that great. I don't have any plans on running a Godzilla motor because I don't have one and I don't know when I would ever get one. Good to see you, Richard. What's your head of choice? I don't know what you mean by a 400-inch Windsor maximum effort. A maximum effort Windsor would be like a a big cup motor or a drag race motor, and you could make 1,000,000 horsepower out with those things if you're talking about the very extended range of like available cylinder heads. So I don't know what that is. I don't build motors like that. I don't build like 800 horsepower all motor 400-inch deals. That's not, because they're wildly expensive and they're not what the average guy wants to. He may want to see it and go, oh yeah, that's really cool, but nobody's ever going to build that. Nobody ever is going to build a motor like that that's is a dry sump and is 15 to 1 and It has a, I think some sort of candid valve head on it or something. When you did the Big Bang 351 Windsor, what did you use to clearance the pistons? I just used a porting tool. Diesels run at wide open throttle. There's no pumping losses. The compression's higher. There's a lot of reasons that they make more power, or that they get better fuel mileage. US Australian Cleveland heads, they do have a lot better ports than the US ones. I'm sure that they do. I know that they have more compression, but an Aussie 2V head is still not like a 4V head is. It's much more like a 2V head. Is there a big difference between Trick 170 ASCAS versus AFR Enforcer ASCAS? I don't know. I've never compared those two. You should be able to go online and look at the flow data for both of those to give you a pretty good idea. Get a Barra straight 6 engine. I have 2 of them that are sitting over in the shop or in the storage area right now. Mike, I don't know the answer to your pushrod question. I don't know about the 85 head and the combination of an E303 cam and a Scorpion pedestal rocker. I just don't know. You're going to have to set it up and measure it. But TFSR head, those are good. We've run those on lots of stuff, especially we ran a set of CNC ported ones, and I think that those made the most power of all of our 225 and up kind of cylinder heads. I think that we may have run that on a I think we ran it on a 427 or something. We had to clearance the piston, or I did clearance the piston bit on the Big Bang one. I think I might have done more than I needed. You use the Boss 290 intake for the 544 valve. Will we ever see a build using a Barra V8 intake on a 543 valve? I don't know what a Barra V8 intake even is. I'm not familiar with it. I think an E303 cam is the same base circle as a stock cam. So you shouldn't have to change the push rod from just that cam change. Robert, your question on that you've asked several times now about freezing the block. I would be worried that the block is cracked. You're going to have to mag it or something to find out if it's cracked. Because if it pops a freeze plug out, that would be nice if that's the relief and it did that and it saved the block. But there's also the chance that it didn't do that and that it cracked something else. Any experience with Speedmaster heads on small block Fords? Yes, those videos are up. I've tested those on. I have run tests on those. When am I getting the FE? There's an FE sitting over here. I showed you guys that last night. It's a boat motor. A dual quad boat motor. Is the stock 302 HO cranked weak, or is it the block? It seems to be the block is splitting. The cranks are still alive when the block splits. Eric, thank you. Oh, yeah, and that's a good idea, Chester, that he could pressure test it. But it would have to be all assembled for him to do that. Cold weather. They aren't really freeze plugs. That's what I mean. If that pops out, that might be because it already broke. I would like to see the Speedmaster cast iron small block Ford. I've never seen one of those. Is there a rule of thumb or average horsepower and torque increase when switching from an Aviad wet sump to an Aviad dry sump? I don't have that number because having never done that, I don't know what that is. Dan might have an idea. You should see a Speedmaster will send you a set of Pontiac heads. I'm a little worried about running stuff and not having somebody go through those. This 5-liter's begging for a new home. I offered it up for sale way back when it had the carburetor and intake, or a carbureted intake manifold on there, and a carburetor distributor. But now I need it to do a bunch of testing. Have you monitored intake plenum vacuum during your testing? I did on the, we did on the 400. I need to do an Iron Duke. So the old myth is true that roller blocks are weak. I don't know. The thin wall casting is definitely weaker than a thicker. And the Mexico block where the had a higher nickel content too, I think. Do you think ported GT40 intakes are capable of? Porting helps, but you can't port this because there's not wall thickness there. So you have the flow rate of this is the flow rate. You can port the lower and you can improve that, but you still have this part and you still have this part. I've seen guys back in the day make this tube bigger. And I've even seen a bigger tube version of this, which might be beneficial. It's still, even if you got the flow, let's say you added 100 CFM per runner, which is a lot. The runner length is still the same. It's still going to want to make power in the same kind of RPM range. The setup on this right now has some kind of cam in it. I don't remember if it's the Extreme Energy or the Summit cam. It has the GT40. It has, these are Blueprint. I think they're Blueprint CNC heads on it. And I don't know what it makes with the GT40 because I've never run it with that. We only ran it with the carbureted intake before. Do you think a small block 351 with the 185 heads? I don't know what it's 573, 582 cam. That doesn't tell me anything about the duration. The lift doesn't help. But whatever it's making NA, 14 pounds is going to be like double that. Any preference between a Ford Racing 351 block or a Dart Iron Eagle block? I think that they're both pretty strong. I haven't looked at a Ford Racing block in a long time. Casey thoughts. Nice. So let's see what it's time for to go actually. Is the 5-liter still a performance player? 83% saying yes. So we will close out our poll. Speedmaster, cast iron small block Ford. I don't think I've ever tried those. John, I don't know about the ring thing. That would be I think you'd be nitpicking on that. Kurt, you saw we've run turbos on stock 5 liters before. Adapt an LS intake to the Windsor. I think that that's possible. I know that the header was really close when we tried that. How much power would you want to make on a stock 351 with boost before you start upgrading the cam? That's up to you. I don't like running a lot of power on those stock combinations because it just sounds unhappy on the dyno because it's so restrictive. It doesn't have any cam timing, and if it has stock heads on it too, it doesn't sound happy. It's like, why are you trying to do this? Why are you trying to take a motor that makes 260 or 270 horsepower at the flywheel and then trying to add boost to that? Get it so it's making 400 or 450 NA, then you don't have to add very much boost. Then you're really, and if you do add boost, then you're starting to make some real numbers. Can you use any of Mike Curcio Ford? I've never heard, I don't know what that is. Never heard of that. Pontiac 400s. Oh, so you really approve of the new round of engines, a Pontiac 400, Ford FE, 5-liter Windsor. There's plenty of Windsor stuff up already. No FE stuff, though. And now there's going to be Pontiac stuff. I don't know what Tony Auto Engineering is in Sassoon. Other guys, the Camaro V6 3800 intake versus front standard wheel. Yeah, I had planned on running that, and thank you very much. But I'd planned on running that when I did the test on the 3800. I wanted to include the Camaro, and we just couldn't get it in time when I was on the dyno doing the testing. Just got a 79 Indy, nice, going original 4-cylinder. Someone put a 5-liter in it. Zephyr. Does that was 79 when they had the that wasn't the Recaro edition, right? Did it have the Recaro seats in it? Do you use any Anderson cams? I've run some of the cams, Anderson cams way back, but I had not recently. $299, 302 duration at 112. Yeah, so the duration to 50 is going to be pretty high on that. So that's going to be a healthy NA camshaft. The high ram intakes always kind of do the same thing on the LS stuff. They're more for top end than they are for low speed stuff, but they seem to make good power. I'm curious how they'll do on a 5-liter or a 351 because those really kind of need power. And the old Flowmaster intake manifold that was basically a Wyand tunnel ram with a box on it seemed to work pretty well back in the day. A pain hose. Yeah. Snafu, if I had 2 identical engines and one of them was balanced and one of them was not balanced, yeah, you can feel an unbalanced engine on the dyno. It's terrible. The Foxes were available with turbo 4-cylinders, not just the SVO. They also had other ones that were turbo and non-intercooled. Richard, should I use an 1 3/4 to 1 7/8 step header on my 383 or just 1 7/8? I don't know that I've ever done a really definitive comparison on that, but judging by the difference that we got going from an 1 3/4 to an 1 7/8 was very, very little. I think an 1 7/8 will work fine on that. Blastian, can we donate parts, and if so, how? What is it you wanted to donate? How much horsepower can a 351 Windsor roller block make before failure? Well, so far it's like 11 or 1200 or something. Factory engines are balanced within tolerance. Matt, a Grand National intake will not bolt on to a 3800. Didn't the Capri do a turbo 289? No, not during the 5-liter era. Do you like girdles for the small block Fords? Yeah, we run girdles on some stuff. I like windage trays more, and the girdle just, in my opinion, just holds the thing together when it splits up the top, but the main caps kind of already do that anyway. This is a 5-liter Ford. And we have 2 minutes left. The XR2 Capri was turbocharged. I don't know if when they made the Capri, they made the 5-liter version. McLaren made some of those. And I think that the Capri, like the Mustang, might have been available with not an intercooled turbo like the SVO, but maybe a regular 4-cylinder one. I'd have to go back and look that up. I'm not that Capri savvy. Is there a horsepower gain going from 1.6 to 1.7 rockers? Sometimes. Tips on getting an old 50s for a beat, a little more pep. What motor is it? Can you make a Coyote the same displacement as a 6-liter? You cannot. It would be cool if you, TOE Performance and CMS Racing Engines get together for a talk. If they're building cup engines and stuff, then that's not what I do. Dan, that's what I thought. I thought that the turbo 2.3s were in the Capris also. You have to have an ignition box if you're running boosted. I don't know. You got to be more specific about your question. Are you talking about a 5-liter Ford? Or are you talking about a fuel injected one? Or are you talking about a carbureted one? What are you talking about? An ignition amplifier for these is a good idea, and especially if guys don't bring their plug gap down, it's almost required. An ignition amplifier is not a bad idea for these. And also, the reason I ran the boxes back in the day on the 5-liter stuff is that it had boost retard. So we could retard the timing relative to boost because we didn't have control over the ECU back then. The 2.3s, guys have made a lot of power with those. I mean, look what Roush did. They used those motors, and I don't know exactly what what blocks they use and stuff, but they used those in, they used the 2.3s in IMSA, I think. I think that they ran turbo Mercurs. I don't think they ran them in Trans Am. And maybe they did with V8s in them, but I think that they ran them in IMSA with little turbo 2.3s in them. Yeah, Tom, definitely hit the like button. Thanks, man. And Tom, here before you leave and before I leave, you'll recognize this because it's sitting right here. Whoa! Boosted LS in the house. Yeah, there we go. And I'm back. Celine, should I sell my 302 and switch to a 351? Ultimately, you can make a lot more power. A production 351 block will go to 1,000 horsepower. I don't think that these will. Oh, look who just showed up. Late as always. We're almost done with our Ford talk. We can do that tomorrow night, though. Yeah, I'm getting ready to get off now. That is a Ford supercharger that was on the LS. That one came from a Coyote kit, but that's basically the GT500 blower that Tom did the kit for to allow use of that GT500 blower, either the early or the late one, to put on an LS, and we've already run it and it worked really well. Okay, that was the last question for tonight. Thank you guys all for showing up. My buddy Mark Sanchez just showed up here. We're going to be talking to him, so make sure you guys come back. We're going to talk more Ford stuff tomorrow night with the one and only Mark Sanchez, and he'll be here to answer all your questions. He's got lots of cool stories for stuff that happened back in the day, Advanced Engineering West, Kaufman Products, maybe some Steve Celine stories we could pry out of them. It'll be a lot of fun. So make sure to come back tomorrow night. Thank you guys all for showing up. I will see you tomorrow. Everyone's saying hi.